Let's just begin. Hello there, Twitch and YouTube. I cannot see myself on Twitch or YouTube, which is kind of worrying. Why is this happening? I had tested you out just before we got here. Why is it misbehaving? Okay, so this is not good. Because y'all know I always test my stuff before delving into anything. Okay, so that's fine. And then that's the microphone. Where is the other camera? I always test everything beforehand. Ah, there we go. Hello. I tried to find a plugin today for closed captions because, hello, welcome. Yeah, because I realized that, I was being very ableist in not having captions for those who are hard of hearing. Yee. So yeah, but I could not find a good bot that wasn't fucking up. I think that's maybe why everything else went a little bit wonky. So how is everybody today? Has everybody had water? Has everybody had water? Had your meds? Eaten something? And said something kind about yourself? And if not, you better do any one of those things right now, preferably all four. I know you're tired, baby. It is exhausting, and you will get through it. If I would have been there if I was around, but I'm kind of banned from your country. Yeah. Okay, good. I'm glad. Because I'll need some rest. Rest is productive too, and it does not mean that your worth is tied to your productivity, but it is good for you. So, last week we finished off with chapter 1 or part 1 of the book. We're talking about abolition, and the theme that was talked about was jail expansion and policing, and how those systems cannot continue while a democratic society does. And so, yeah, let's just go to page 79, chapter 2 or part 2, feminism. And yes, we are reading Abolition Feminism Now by Angela Davis, Gina Dent, Erica Miners, and Beth Ritchie. And all of them pull their collective knowledge and resources together to make this book something quite special, actually. And if you are confused about where your activism is going, thank you, my love. Thank you so much. God, I love you. I love you so much. W to Kiara. So, yeah, what I want to ask you is, what does feminism mean to you? And what does being a feminist look like? And then I will get into what my thoughts are. Because everybody has a different concept of what their feminism looks like, whether they are feminist or not, what school of thought it follows. There's a whole lot of different things that people look at when they look at the when we really look into the ideologies to which we subscribe. And it's important to ask oneself, what does this look like? Where does this come from? I feel like I'm in a survival game, inventory management loop, except hard mode because I don't have a GUI. I mean, I was just watching a friend whose birthday it is today play Dead by Daylight. So, yeah, I get you. Inventory management loop. Do you want to put your inventory into the chat? Not the chat, the channel that we created for your move in the Discord. Write everything down and I'll put it into a spreadsheet. Or I'll create a spreadsheet. Because, it's what I do. We have that shared spreadsheet for a reason. Hi, Witty Kitty. It's good to see you. So, okay, don't worry about it. I'll hop onto VC afterwards. So, everybody's feminism comes from a different place. And you will be surprised to know that I don't actually identify as a feminist. Because for me, feminism does not include me. Feminism does not include people from the global south, people who were previously or currently colonized. Feminism was not created for people who look like me. Feminism is a gender diverse exclusionary, and its intention, it was first wave, second wave, third wave, all of that. And every single wave of feminism, HIB, has a sense of, yeah, we want to include Black, Indigenous, and women of the global majority. Or we want to include gender diverse people, but there's always the but. When it comes to gender issues, as Rennie Edo Lodge said in Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race, it seems that when there are gender issues at play, race takes a backseat. And generally, white feminists utterly refuse, to acknowledge their role and their complicity in the white supremacist delusion. So, Ilio, we have exclusionary movements that were created in the global north, and we don't see ourselves represented. We don't see ourselves fitting into these movements because our intersections of race, class, colonization, all of these kinds of things are pushed to the side and saying you are countering this is a counter narrative to women's liberation. But but we're talking about gender diverse people. Yes, it's about women's liberation. Like, yes, trans women or women, no, it's about women's liberation. And then when we say, okay, but what about how brown women are treated in the global south? Yeah, it's not about colonization. Yes, women's liberation has everything to do with colonization. So yes, I don't identify as a feminist. I'm still doing the same kind of work though, because labels do matter, but not as much as people think they do. I don't put too much stock in what I call myself, rather the work that I would like to do, the work that I am doing, and the work that needs doing. So it kind of looks something like feminism, but let's call it decolonial. If I have to give a label to myself, it's a decolonial intersectional proletariat. And if you want to talk decolonization here, there's a person named Des, Decolonize with the Des, and he is fantastic. Please go and check his content out. So, page 79, if you're following along. Feminism. In the summer of 2020, a small group of evolving abolition feminists wrote a powerful open letter to the anti-violence movement called the Moment of Truth, acknowledging how mainstream anti-violence interventions had relied too much on the criminal legal system and, as such, repeatedly failed Black, Indigenous, and people of color, survivors, leaders, organizations, and movements. 47 established anti-violence coalitions from 20 states across the US signed the letter. In doing so, they demonstrated their willingness to stand in solidarity with activists who wrote that turning away is no longer an option. Superficial reform is not enough. Indeed, the letter built on the assertion that feminist goals are not possible without abolition. And I agree. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I don't know if I'm allowed to say your name. We have failed to listen to Black feminist liberationists and other colleagues of color in the movement who cautioned us against the consequences of choosing increased policing, prosecution, and imprisonment as the primary solution to gender-based violence. Thing is that even though it is considered the primary solution to gender-based violence, it doesn't work against gender-based violence because the perpetrators are not brought to justice, or very few of them. Thank you so much, Kitty. I still feel like unless you have your name on TikTok, it's like everybody knows that I'm Nikita, because that was my name before. But if you've never had your name as your name, it's like, I don't know if I should. Carceral systems are looked to being the only type of a solution to gender-based violence, but the carceral system does not work for women, femmes, and gender-diverse people. Got you. Because so few people who perpetuate gender-based violence are the recipients of quote-unquote justice. And is it justice when an entire society is raised on punitive policing rather than restorative policing and justice? We have promoted false solutions of reforming systems that are designed to control people rather than real community-based solutions that support healing and liberation. We have invested significantly in the criminal legal system, despite knowing that the vast majority of survivors choose not to engage with it, and those who do are often re-traumatized by it. And that is a huge, huge thing. We have held up calls for victim safety to justify imprisonment and ignore the fact that prisons hold some of the densest per capita population of trauma survivors in the world. And that is important. People who are in prison are generally traumatized people. We have ignored and dismissed transformative justice approaches to healing, accountability, and repair, approaches created by Black, Indigenous, and people of color leaders, and used successfully in our communities. Explicitly calling for the centering of leadership from Black and Indigenous communities, as well as from other communities of color, a divestment from the criminal legal system, the letter signifying triumph and trouble. Some of the signatories, especially those of domestic violence and sexual assault conditions, representing large numbers of the mainstream shelters and rape crisis centers in more conservative states, faced immediate backlash. Calling the statement offensive and dangerous, the Idaho Prosecuting Attorneys Association and Sheriff's Association, as well as the Idaho Chief of Police Association, withdrew their support for the Idaho Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence. So they weren't really supporting them anyway, were they? Because as soon as support is conditional on a two-way system, you don't really support survivors. You're not really supporting the cause at all. In fact, what you are doing is you are showing people that your support for women is conditional on them believing in you and coddling you and making you the center of their system. So all of these legal systems that are directly involved in the prison industrial complex and the carceral system say, oh, you guys, you victims and survivors of violence, domestic violence and sexual violence, you're not turning to us, so we in turn are not going to support you in any way. See how that support is conditional? They showed themselves for who they really are. Showing the carceral system for what it is. Not a system that protects victims of violence, but a system that depends on violence to survive. Oof. Please, can somebody put that in the general chat of my server? Because honestly, I think people need to hear that. Funders called into question the focus of the work. Legislators pushed back against the analysis of how laws have interfered with safety. Police chiefs objected to being identified as part of the problem. And local service partners distanced themselves because they feared a loss of status if they identified with the brave coalition members who dared to speak out about the carceral orientation of these feminist anti-violence activists, standing in the path of emancipatory strategies that would require taking abolition seriously. And of course, it was a movement that was spearheaded by BIPOC. So of course, they weren't going to take it seriously. Anything to undermine the global majority. At the same time, the Moment of Truth statement galvanized more general support for racial justice from anti-violence programs. It inspired Embrace, a medium-sized advocacy agency in Barron County, Wisconsin, which serves people who have been hurt by domestic violence, to write a public statement. In the midst of a national uprising and dialogue on state violence, Embrace adds our voices, affirming the humanity and dignity of Black, Indigenous, and people of color. We share the global grief over the lives of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery, as well as the shootings of Jacob Blake and many other acts of racist violence perpetrated against black people over the past 400 years in this country. Like Martin Luther King Jr. and Emmett Till, they will not be forgotten. As an anti-violence organization, Embrace cannot end one form of violence without addressing the other, and we cannot properly serve all survivors if we do not acknowledge and address the oppression and violence the most marginalized survivors are experiencing. This statement, much like the one by Moment of Truth, argues that the root cause of racism, police violence, sexual violence, and gender-based violence are the same, and that the work to end gender violence must include attention to how structural oppression and state violence shape and indeed deepen the impact on survivors and others. It's what I've always been saying for years and years and years. Gender-based violence is state-sanctioned because it is interlinked to all other forms of colonial violence. It is extractive in its root, at its very core. Gender-based violence is extractive, not extractive of the way in the way that people think of what sexual desire or whatnot, but it is mentally extractive of the self-worth of people. You draw out people's self-worth, and in them you can instill a sense of inferiority that can enslave their mind. No, not my Dom. It is not time to be more active. It is time to read. The statement ended with a resounding declaration. Embrace supports the movement for Black lives. We hear their words, uplift their voices, and stand in the anti-violence values of our organization. We hope you will join us in breaking the cycle of trauma created by racism and violence. Embrace solidified its commitment by posting a Black Lives Matter sign on the organization's front window near the prominently displayed rainbow flag, signaling the organization's commitment to queer solidarity. As individual programs and statewide anti-violence coalitions expressed support for Black Lives Matter and pulled back from engagement with the carceral state, police departments, prosecutors, state attorneys, and other entities immediately began to sever ties with anti-violence programs. Embrace's powerful words and impassioned invitations were met with immediate disdain from key community leaders, like the Barron County Board of Supervisors, halting funding to the organization, reducing its budget by $25,000. Along with the 4 area police departments, the Barron County Sheriff's Department cut ties with the agency, which likely means they will no longer refer people who need assistance to Embrace for emergency services. Other anti-violence groups have taken vocal positions like Embrace and signatories of the Moment of Truth statement, experiencing similar forms of swift retaliation from law enforcement and other state carceral entities. The speed with which these relationships between carceral actors and anti-gender violence groups with abolitionist orientations unraveled reveals their inherent fragility. Hello, cat. Oi. The vet said that his kahunas got taken out. I couldn't, they have prosthetics for those? Like, they even do them for cats. The vet said that it'll be mean to have to replace them with little jingly bells. I wish I could have right now. Because maybe then you wouldn't be so eager to show the entire world your butthole. At least get paid for it. The organizing work that produced the Moment of Truth statement and the backlash that resurfaced decades-old tension between feminist work and gender violence work and abolitionist demands to close prisons was reminiscent of earlier conflicts between activists focusing on racist state violence and those calling for an end to domestic violence. Yeah, right? A political misalignment that had been simmering just below the surface was once again on display. Carceral policymakers, law enforcement organizations, conservative funders, mainstream service providers, and many academic researchers were, for the most part, unwilling to acknowledge that programs targeting gender violence should be concerned with advancing racial justice, and were reluctant to consider that survivors of gender violence might be harmed rather than helped by police. The evidence is all there. They just refuse to see it. One of the most pointed examples of this tension was the lead story in a widely circulated domestic violence report called Another Perspective on the Moment of Truth statement, which criticized abolitionist demands and claiming survivors do not support defunding the police. Yeah, I do. Hi. The report's broad claims about the role of policing in creating safety for those who experience gender violence blatantly ignores what many women and non-binary people of color had been asserting for years. Because systemic racism drives the criminal legal system, it is not only not protective for those survivors who are not part of the mainstream, it endangers them. Indeed, tensions between abolition and feminism exemplified by the article in Domestic Violence Report are as old as they are familiar. Precisely at the moment domestic violence and sexual assault were being recognized as crimes, thus presumably requiring carceral responses, contemporary abolitionists were effectively challenging a criminal legal system that naturalized retributive punishment. Unfortunately, the abolition work that emerged in the early 70s did not necessarily attend to questions of gender violence, despite the presence of feminist leadership. For some leaders in both movements, this discord, both philosophical and political, were treated as a fundamental roadblock. For others, decades of work in this movement illustrated the stark reality. While it is critical to hold those who use violence accountable, advocating for greater involvement by the criminal legal system is counterproductive at best and can actually further endanger survivors. Hello, welcome. The analysis of abolition feminism that we advance in this book is predicated on the indivisibility of abolition and feminism. Abolition is stronger and more effective precisely because of its feminism. On the other hand, gender justice will not be realized without the incorporation of abolition praxis. Beyond the challenges posed by adversary forces, abolition feminists recognize the necessary intersection of questions raised both by anti-violence activists as well as abolitionists. For example, do calls for the defunding of police fully reckon with the danger of having classified gender violence as a crime, like any other, leading to even larger investments in police and prisons? Or do analyses of the way structural racism in the criminal legal system promotes transphobia and also include attention to disability justice? Those are really important questions. Hello, my love. Okay, go ahead, kiss. No.
You were buying your bloody fortress, yeah?
Let's come here.
Why do I constantly find these aprons on the floor?
I don't know. You're a nut.
I didn't know. No.
Huh?
I stepped on them against the crack, no?
It's fine. Thank you. I love you. Give me a kiss in the forehead.
Will you use some top ties at the time?
I shall indeed. These are really important questions because it's not just about intersectionality. It is about who is protected and who isn't. Who is granted the the privilege of humanity and who isn't. Who is granted the privilege of being considered worthy of being protected by the state. And then look at the carceral system and see who isn't. Because even though the carceral system purports to protect survivors and gain justice for victims, it doesn't. Less than, 4% worldwide of all gender-based violence cases see the inside of a courtroom. That's not protecting survivors. That is not getting justice for victims. 4% worldwide. And even fewer of those are actually found guilty. Most cases out of that 4%, is it 4 or 6? I can't remember. Tasha will know. Because Tasha, you know random facts. Yeah, it's not B. Most of the cases are thrown out of court because, and now I am listing off the top of my head because I've said this so often, majority of the cases are dismissed because of lack of evidence, lack of physical evidence. The primary witness, who is the only witness in most of these cases, is considered unstable or untrustworthy. Judges deem that the perpetrator is too respected in society to have done anything. That has been a defense to throw the cases out. And the last one gets me every single time I say it. The judge determines before the case even begins that it was consensual and the woman regrets it. B, you're onto something there. Where is this feminist imperative to acknowledge intersectionalities of struggles as explicit policies and praxis in current abolitionist mobilizations? Where is the sustained political commitment to abolition in feminist anti-violence work? These are urgent questions, posed here as part of a rhetorical strategy for rethinking the current movement and to invite a recognition within more prominent genealogies of abolition and its roots in radical organizing against both state and intimate violence. Now, I want to draw a parallel here. State violence and intimate violence are one and the same. It is rooted in the same heteropatriarchal white supremacist delusion. That is the modus operandi of the state, and that is the MO of people who perpetuate intimate violence. Two pew-pewings within 2 hours in the US, one at a school and the other at a synagogue. If you can find those links, please put them in the news channel. We return here to the historical legacies of abolition feminism as a way of showing how women of color and other radical anti-violence activists have long called for divestment from the criminal legal system. And so these are going into very much discussions on like specific movements. So I am going to stop there, but I would like to actually have a discussion. So if you guys want to do it on Discord, or like you're happy with this format, please let me know. But in essence, the reason I want to stop there and not go into the specific organizations just yet is because of the way feminism has been portrayed as this savior of the broken, the beaten, and the damned. Shut up, Nikki. It's too close to the weekend. I am so sorry.
Dare you tell the love of my life to shut up? I'm so bad.
Okay. Feminism is given to people as this kind of savior of every woman in the world. And it's not. Last year we read a book by Françoise Vergès called Decolonial Feminism, and she shows how feminism has damaged movements for racialized gender justice, especially feminist movements led by white women. And we see what white feminism has done over centuries. We see that it has hindered progress for women and femmes and gender diverse people of color the world over, until people brought out photographs and evidence from police files and stuff. White queers tried to erase Martha P. Johnson. And of course they did, because she was black and trans. So we can't just rely on feminism as this overarching, yeah, they really fucking tried. We can't rely on feminism, period. Because mostly it's run by white women. And white women would rather lean into their whiteness than stand in solidarity with women, femmes, and gender diverse people of color. White supremacy always comes first. And I've begun to call it the white supremacist delusion for a reason, because it is a delusion. There is no such thing as white supremacy. Whiteness is not supreme by any means. I mean, what is so supreme about people who age like milk? What it is, though, is colonialism at work. And when the work of colonialism is so deeply entrenched in a system like policing, no, Kiara, absolutely the fuck not. But yeah, when you take all of these systems and you see how they work together, it all stems back to protecting colonial values and systems. Oh, yeah. There's this artist. She blew up on TikTok last year. Sophia Isela. I think you may have heard The Doll People. The song. That comment just made me think of it.
The doll people are not men. They are made of ice and glass. Our skin is clay and painted blue. Our heads can detach. We are
Statues with a pulse.
We are
Art you can fuck. It's a great song. Sophia Isela is wonderful. Every single comment that wasn't even addressed to her, but when people started talking about race in the comments, all of the white women who were standing by the message of the song would attack those women, those black, indigenous, and brown women in the comments, having their own discussions about race. With no invitation to take part in the conversation. They would say the nastiest things on her videos to the people having completely, I wouldn't say unrelated, but their own discussions in the comment section. And if art is not supposed to be a conversation starter, I don't know what the fuck is. Thank you. But the vitriol thrown at women of the global majority on Sophia Isela's videos is testament to the fact that the feminist movement, as it was conceptualized for the liberation of white women only, will never save us. We can call it what we like, regardless of the name. But at the end of the day, a movement that does not include total intersectionality will never be liberatory. Any questions? That song makes men incredibly uncomfortable, by the way. What did they complain about? Thank you, my love. Yeah. Because they don't see how damaging and pervasive it is. Because, you know, and this is something I'm so certain that many people who have listened to me over the years are really tired of hearing this. There is an essay that people should read. The essay is called This is Water. I'm going to read a little bit of it. This is Water by David Foster Wallace. It is a short essay. It was a 2005 commencement speech at Kenyon College. This is just before he committed suicide. Greetings, parents, and congratulations to Kenyon's graduating class of 2005. There are two young fish swimming along, and they happen to meet an older fish swimming the other way, who nods at them and says, "Morning, boys, how's the water?" And the two young fish swim on for a bit, and then eventually one of them looks over at the other and goes, "What the hell is water?" This is a standard requirement of US commencement speeches, the deployment of a didactic little parable. The story thing turns out to be one of the better, less bullshitty conventions of the genre, but if you're worried that I plan to present myself here as the wise older fish explaining what water is to younger fish, please don't. I'm not the wise old fish. The point of the fish story is merely that the most obvious, important realities are often the ones that are hardest to see and talk about. Stated as an English sentence, of course, this is just a banal platitude, but the fact is that in the day-to-day trenches of adult existence, banal platitudes can have a life or death importance, or I wish to suggest to you on this dry and lovely morning. So I know this stuff probably doesn't sound very fun or breezy or grandly inspirational the way a commencement speech is supposed to. Well, as far as I can see, the capital T truth, the whole lot of rhetorical niceties are stripped away. You are, of course, free to think whatever you wish, but please don't dismiss this as some finger-wagging. None of this is really about morality or religion or dogma or big fancy questions, life or death. This is the capital T truth about life before death. This is water. This is water. It's unimaginably hard to do so, to stay conscious, alive in the adult world, day in and day out, which means yet another grand cliche turns out to be true. Your education really is the job of a lifetime, and it commences now. It's a beautiful way of putting things. When you are in something day in and day out, it's hard to see. That reality that your ex lives in, of course, he's not going to be able to see why that song resonates with almost every single person who it resonates with. How many men I've heard talk about women, not just women, my friends, who have said, "Yeah, I'll fuck her with a paper bag over her head." You've said that about me. So, of course, when we are able to just one of the things, I don't even know. Like, they're people who don't matter. But yeah, I've heard it. It also comes with being a journalist. I don't just overhear, I eavesdrop. Yes, I do eavesdrop. We've heard so many of these things over time, over years, that it becomes normal to us, so that a song like that will make absolute sense. And they haven't. So it makes no sense at all. Just as white women who defend the casteral system as being one of the only ways to protect victims, they do not see how damaging it is to communities of color, to the global majority, to the most marginalized in society, because it works for them. The refusal to see another person's reality is one of the worst things that has ever come out of our human society. Because it's not just the refusal to see another person's point of view or another person's reality. It is the stripping away of empathy, so that is rooted in people not seeing other people as human. Because we are told constantly that we are us, they are them. They are different. They don't deserve what you have. And so I'm going to stop there for today, Twitch and YouTube. I shall see you on Tuesday, not Monday, Tuesday, for a continuation of the architecture of modern empire, individualism and dehumanizing the other, exactly. And yes, I shall see you then, and